Well, first of all, I'm very glad to be in contact with many friends, I'm sure, in Stockholm at this conference, and I wish you all the best for the conference. And of course, I would like to say a few words in Swedish before I go back to English, which is our lingua franca in development discussions. Jag är väldigt glad att få träffa på detta sätt kollegor i Stockholm. Skulle önska att jag var där. Men hoppas att ni arbetar hårt med de här frågorna som handlar om framtiden, som handlar om att sätta riktningen för utvecklingspolitik efter 2015. Och vi räknar med bidrag från er vid detta möte, men också senare från många er till FN. By this I can only say that the importance cannot be exaggerated. We have had a success story in the form of the Millennium Development Goals. They are quantifiable to a great degree, they are measurable, and I think they have served a very important purpose, both on the global level but also among nations. I travel much and work much with Africa, and I know there is almost a competition among the states who is most successful in achieving the MDGs. So we have this huge task of, first of all, accelerating, in my view, the present Millennium Development Goals. And we have much work to do on that. We may come back to that subject. But then we need to chart the road ahead on the next generation of goals and targets. Unfortunately, I think we will still have to work with poverty eradication, which remains a huge challenge, not least if you look at it from the perspective of equity. There are more poor people living in middle-income countries than in poor countries in today's world, as you may know. But then there is also in today's world the existential issue of the need to look into the issues related to environment, related to climate change. It is an existential threat, and I think this generation, which is now to define the road ahead, need to bring into seriously the issues of sustainability. The third element that I think needs to be taken into account is related to the rule of law, to human rights, the perspective related to good governance, and the fact that these goals in the end must be universally applied, that we all have a responsibility to make sure that the next targets become an obligation for all of us. There are many ways of influencing, and I would very much invite as many actors as possible in this debate, because if in the end the member states, who in the end will decide the goals or targets, whatever they will be called, if this is seen as a bottom-down process rather than from the field, from the grassroots level, then we don't have enough credibility for the process. So I would hope that in all respects there is a contact, there is a conversation going on between civil society and the different levels on which this work is being done. And let me say that there is a high-level panel working on post-2015 development agenda, where there is a Swedish representative, Gunilla Carlsson. She might even be in the room, or at least have colleagues in the room, I'm pretty sure. And I know she's a very active member, and there are 27 of them, and they will present a report by end of May, beginning of June. And I know that they are working in a very transparent manner and are very, very receptive to ideas from the outside. Then there is also a process taking place here in New York, hopefully very soon, which has to do with the Sustainable Development Goals. There was a decision in the Rio conference end of June, and there will be a working group set up here, working, I would hope, in a very open and transparent manner also, and receptive to ideas on the Sustainable Development Goals. They will work even into the next General Assembly period. So here's two processes that go on in parallel, but they will merge. I'm absolutely certain that in the end there will be attempts to bring the two tracks together. Then there is also the UNDP and UNDG consultations among nation states. They are doing, I think, almost 100 consultations on the MDGs particularly. And on the road ahead, and also thematic consultations. There are a number of processes now which are preparing us for defining the goals for 2015, where you will have, in my view, the next generation MDGs, hopefully something as strong and concrete as the present MDGs, but there will also be a need to add the more qualitative elements which have to do with sustainability, of course, and good governance and rule of law and human rights. And that is a huge challenge, because back in 2000 this was a pretty easy hands-on exercise. The Millennium Declaration was adopted, and then a few smart people were brought together and they defined the Millennium Goals in more practical terms, the 8 goals. Now we have a much more complicated process where we need to maintain the energy and the practicality of the MDG goals, and we certainly have measurable progress to make even after 2015, I'm sure, particularly in sanitation, which I follow very closely, and maternal health. But then we also need to make sure that we have taken into account in a serious way, not in the way of rhetorical declarations, but in serious ways, the aspects related to sustainability and good governance. And that is going to be a tough task for the member states. And of course it is our task, these different tracks that I just described, to give the contributions to the member states. And then I hope that the member states will keep what I would summarize as both the bold ideas and at the same time practical ideas. It's going to be a great challenge for both we who work with this in the Secretariat and the agencies and programs and specialized agencies, but above all for the member states, who in the end will take on this responsibility. And the importance of meetings like this one now in Stockholm for me is basically that we need to have the engagement of people, of citizens of the member states. There has to be a debate that goes on which brings in these different elements, some of them acceptable to most, some of them less acceptable. But if we have a debate among people, the citizens of the world, and we feel a groundswell of support for certain aspects to be brought in, that of course helps in these negotiations.